Hello. We're going to be talking today about the Trane vapor vacuum 3/4 inch radiator valve that this, as near as I can tell, was produced in the early 1920s and was used for Trane vapor systems. Usually these were attached to convectors, and because Trane was one of the first ones to come out with the convectors as an alternative to the heavy cast iron radiators. One of the reasons why you would confront this valve is that most of the time this is locked, doesn't turn, or turns very slowly and reluctantly, and the material inside the washer is sufficiently decayed as to no longer shut against the steam. So let's break this down and see if we can find out its secrets. Usually this is covered with several layers of paint. You have to chip through and you find a slotted head screw. The screw is a 1024 thread, and it's got a pretty thick top, cylindrical top on it. Next is the hard rubber Trane handle, and it was patented. Looks like it says January 22nd, 1924. If this will sometimes decay due to continual leaking steam, and what you've got is the metallic shell with a square punched out to correspond to the square on the spline. The spline, of course, has sloped sides, and then you have this indicator knob on there. Now normally there is a shield covering this spring and clip, but the shield was made out of a rubber compound and usually decays away. You could probably replace this with a short section of 3/4 inch copper, and if you want to cover that up, or you could just leave it bare. Usually you want to soak this with penetrating oil and let it work its magic over time. In order to get the bonnet off, the bonnet is an unusual size. It's not any kind of standard unit. The nearest I can that I've been able to find that's commercially available is a 46 millimeter 12-point socket. You want to have 12 points because it'll line up with the octagonal bonnet, and you can usually get that off without distorting the body. So this comes apart. As you can see, this one, the material is relatively intact. You're confronted with a slotted screw bolt, and you can sometimes impact that out, but often what will happen is this will shatter and break. This is OEM. The thread size on this is 12/28 threads. It's kind of unusual, and the screw portion is actually embedded in this washer cup, and there's not much to it. So if that shears off, you're pretty much looking at a new valve. Or you can salvage parts from an old valve and rebuild this. I've had to grip this and grip this with a wrench to get this to move. You have the spiral threads. One spiral makes one complete revolution in 1/4 of an inch, so that enabled you to turn this less than a full turn to open and close this valve. You can break this down. I have an older one here. This is the one where the screw shattered, with the bolt, the bolt shattered. What they usually do is they put this on and then they stake that. And you see the dimples there where they've struck it so that it doesn't come off easily. When it comes off, you may have to run a die down there to rethread it. This is again 12/28. You can use a rubber 1-inch EDPM rubber disc, which will then fit in there more or less snugly, and then you can run that down to rebuild this. This comes out. You can see I've marked this in silver marker to show that it's one spiral. There are two others, so the total of 3 spirals matching up with the 3 lugs on the spindle. It's the shaft. You can see it's been pitted over the years by leakage. This is where the packing went into in this space. It's graphite based, where it goes in there like that. You can probably repack it with 3/32 PTFE. Shove that in there like so. Probably going to need at least a foot or more of this stuff. That goes in there like that. Then there is a compression washer that rides on top of that. Then there is a spring. Spring is, as far as I can tell, OEM. A search in the McMaster card catalog did not turn up anything close to this. This one is in bad shape. You can see it's rusted due to decades worth of leaking. This goes in there like so. Then there is another spring, and then another clip. And the clip goes into there, not very easily. And so again, you might have to have a contingency plan to be able to, if you want to try to rebuild these valves. You might want to, of course, this is a summertime project and not something you need to do in an emergency. In an emergency, you probably have to completely replace the valve. If you want to maintain the old-fashioned look, rebuilding is an option, but be prepared to lose this, the spring. Don't lose these extra clips, and you probably have a modicum of success getting these things back in order. The Trane company recognized the weakness of this design pretty early on and made a major improvement. Now this, by the way, this spring packing, they call it a packless valve, but it really isn't. They tend to lock up. They still make this type of quote-unquote packless valve today, and it just takes a little bit of leaking around the packing, and these things just lock up, and they can be a real challenge to deal with. So what the Trane company did, starting in the late 30s, is they improved the design. This is the patent information on the improved version of this valve, and here it is. So they use the same body. They use the same spud, which is really nice because then you don't have to remove this radiator spud, but you could not reuse this body. directly. You had to remove the old body, because what they did is they machined this out to fit the newer components. As we'll see, we'll take this apart. So the same screw comes out. So they reuse the same thread configuration. They simplified the valve a little bit. They got rid of the metallic component. They went from a hard vulcanized rubber to a phenolic resin. Now, the phenolic resin is pretty hard and durable, but it is brittle. It just takes a glancing blow and it'll shatter. That was one of the disadvantages of this. The same pointer knob, the same square stem, the same overall appearance, and the bonnet is roughly the same. There you can get a close-up. There's the patent number and the on-off indicator. This is a new old stock valve. Bonnet is the same, that weird 36 millimeter octagonal component. Let me break this down. I'm going to take a look at the body real quick. Completely different on the inside. The top portion, there is a thin copper diaphragm which separates the steam and vacuum vapor inside of here, which is exposed, from the threads here. So all the threads are here. You can see they've graphited it, and they've got a lot of little googies there to make that open and shut. So again, a quarter of a turn can make a huge difference in the flow. So this goes back on here. Like so. This does lock up, by the way. This is not impervious to failure, but it shows you what's inside. Take this apart, and they've really greased it up. That's what's inside. And there is be mindful that there is a disc and a washer right here. And they were fairly confident of this valve. The advertising of the period says that they offered a lifetime warranty on the valve. You might have a little trouble collecting on that warranty from the current Trane administration. They don't even remember they used to do vapor. So you can see that the valve body is similar, although there's the machining, there's the machine portion of it that they made to modify to fit this this assembly here. So you have these little jaspers. Don't move, don't lose them. This goes on top and pushes this down. And there's where it works. Now they've got a large truss head screw, fine threads. This one though is quarter 28 threads rather than the 12/28 threads, so they made the thread screw a little bit more robust. The washer, this is hardened rubber material, and they reuse the same size roughly, so that fits in the old early 1920s version, although they simplified again the cover, the holder. Inside of here is a very well designed system that this spring is no longer steel but is corrosion resistant, probably phosphor bronze or something, and it is protected by the construction from direct steam flow. and it's assembled thusly. Goes in there, and this is the Trane number 44. These little lever mechanisms go like so, down it goes like so. That locks on. See the inside and the open and shut mechanism. Like so. So if you got one of these, chances are it's in pretty good shape. Rebuild parts are pretty scarce. We have a couple that all steamed up so that we can rebuild these valves without taking them offline. If you have one of these, you have really two options: either completely replace the valve, or you can try the kit from Tunstall. You have a gasket here, which is the weak point, and goes in the bottom and fits so. Then there is the bonnet assembly with a gasket that sits on there, and then this goes back on with a hex, and then you can put a thermostatic actuator on here which pushes down on this and opens and shuts the valve internally. Although I'm not too fond of this design because it kind of takes away from the old-time 1920s look, and but it is a viable option if you have limited access to removing the valve. So if you have any questions, comments, please leave them below, and I thank you very much for your time.